Get started without Tyler. Oh, he's definitely coming to this one, and I saw him like trying to park his car, but I don't know where. We can get started. Are we rolling? Is the mic on? Okay, great. Well, we'll get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to our Public Philosophy Week event here at Frankie's to discuss the role of a circular economy for food in supporting more resilient food systems and communities, and the role of restaurants in that story. I'm Sara Talib. I'm a PhD candidate in food systems at the University of Vermont, and I am joined here by the dynamic duo behind Frankie's and some other cool team members. I'll let them introduce themselves briefly.
I'm Cindy Kozak, and I started the restaurant with Jordan.
Jordan where?
Executive
Yeah,
chef. Cook. Johnny, did you want to?
I'm Johnny. I'm a sous chef.
Awesome. Great. And just to give you a bit of a background about why this topic is important to me and hopefully to many of you, my PhD research focuses on the role of chefs and restaurants in sustainable food system transitions. And I'm using circularity, sort of this idea of a circular economy for food, as a lens for sustainable food systems. So for those of you that may not know what a circular economy is or haven't heard of circularity, first I can start by saying that we currently have a linear model. We have a linear food system that is a major driver of climate change and biodiversity loss, as it is built around a throwaway culture. We take, make, and waste. Whereas the circular economy for food and circularity is based around three goals, which include eliminating waste, keeping products circulating and materials for as long as possible and at their highest value, and regenerating nature. And so for a restaurant, eliminating waste can look like anything from eliminating single-use packaging to using whole ingredients in cooking, so not wasting a single bit of an ingredient when transforming the ingredient. For circulating products, that's extending the life of food for as long as possible so that it's edible by humans. So this is from proper storage techniques to fermentation to having a plan for surplus food and how to distribute it afterwards. And then regenerating nature, this concept is really about sourcing ingredients that are promoting soil health, promoting biodiversity, but also things like minding your energy footprint and resource footprint, like your water footprint of the restaurant. And all of these principles are driven by design. So how do we redesign the system so that it is waste is designed out? And in fact, designing waste out of our systems is probably one of the top levers for mitigating climate change. And I didn't say this. This is Project Drawdown, which is an NGO that looks at climate change mitigation. And they have said that it's probably the top lever, which means that the top thing we can do to mitigate climate change. But in order for a circular economy to be, and a circular economy for food to be a sustainable alternative to what we have currently, we need to have an approach. All these three principles are great, but there needs to be a social sustainability approach to make this, this circular economy truly a sustainable alternative. That means we need a socio-ethical, values-based, and relational approach to designing waste out of our food system. And this is where the role of restaurants comes in, to my interest and to, I think, the interest of the community, as their commitments to producers and consumers are quite important in this story about social sustainability. And why chefs, why restaurants? I think that they're very, it's not just that I think they are very uniquely placed in our food system as sort of intermediaries between producers with their direct sourcing from farmers and consumers after they transform food and deliver it to consumers, influencing our attitudes and behaviors. So I will jump right into a conversation with Frankie's, and everyone please feel free to chime in. This is a really informal, hopefully engaging conversation. I may also speak too fast. You can let me know if I'm doing that, and I will try to slow down. But really the idea is to engage you as much as possible, since this conversation is about the community. So maybe to get us started off, can you both tell us about your mission and vision behind Frankie's, and maybe even for those of us who don't know, who is Frankie?
Yeah, do you want to start?
Sure. Frankie, it's named after my wife's parents' restaurant, so it's super important to what we're doing. But our philosophy was to build a restaurant in this community. I mean, it's kind of a crazy idea to even open a restaurant this day and age. Like, it's a lot of people told us we shouldn't do it. But to us, we really wanted to create something that can help downtown Burlington and us continue our growth in our careers, but also provide more opportunities for cooks and Johnny, our sous chef. Like, all those pieces kind of were like part of what we're trying to build. We try to buy as much local as possible. You know, it's the hardest time of year. We buy a lot. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, no, I think that was the general sort of idea surrounding what we're doing. Wanting to provide another space for people to come and be able to gather. I think those are sort of disappearing in a lot of ways. And also, I think for us too, and the way that Jordan cooks so seasonally and so closely with the Vermont seasons here, which are like short and quick, and they burn fast and then they go away quickly. But that the culture here in this state is still very much an agrarian culture, and it's something that we really believe in and want to support. And I think that if you're talking about sustainability in the food world, that's an important thing to mention and realize that buying local and eating seasonally is a large part of that. So.
Great, thank you. And can you talk to me and us a little bit about what are your core values as a restaurant, and how do they align with your sustainability goals?
Yeah, I think, some of our values are to, treat employees well, work together, provide a nurturing space for people who we work with and who come in and dine with us. And, it's a very intimate space a lot of times. Restaurants, can feel, it's one of the places where you're in a room with a lot of people, but also you're having this like intimate moment with somebody else. So to be able to provide that for people is a big deal for us. In terms of values, I think maybe you want to add on to that or say more?
Yeah, there's the values. It really comes down to like the relationships you have with people, and like they're very personal. Especially with, like, just our employees are very personal, but also with the producers and people we buy from. Like we buy from people that we're friends with. We build these relationships over here, and that really goes a long way, and more important these days to have these kind of relationships with people. And I always use like Pamacala as a great example. Just that it's just, when we first opened, they came here and celebrated his mom's birthday upstairs, and it was just like they're supporting us and we're supporting them. And that just makes the whole process like easy and like enjoyable and like the way it should be, And then they create this great product that we get to cook with and prepare tasty things that people come in and enjoy themselves. I don't know, it's fucking awesome. That's to be a part of. Sperms.
Yeah,
Totally. Asparagus is it. That's like the vegetable that kicks off the season. Yeah, for sure.
Who's Pamikala?
Yeah.
Is that a
Can I
good,
ask
good
a
question? Sure.
We're dedicated CSA people, and I was wondering, is there any is it comparable in the relationship? I mean, we have a very close relationship with the Intervale people since 1990. And I just wondered if there was any, it sounds like you're talking about the same thing, but are there CSAs for restaurants?
Not CSAs, so to speak, but I mean, we get lists multiple times a week and then order off them.
I think a CSA is more curated, like
Yeah.
for people, and whereas like we're going from a wholesale list, and Jordan's
Right,
choosing
right.
what he is excited about from any given farm.
The one thing that our CSA and the Intervale CSA did was they switched from being a CSA to being a co-op. And they asked for the members of the CSA to put some money into the co-op voluntarily. And then all of a sudden we could buy tractors, which turns out tractors are really
Handy to have.
nice to have if you're a farm, right? Why don't restaurants offer a co-op option with people that come to the restaurant, right? So you would have a capital budget that would come, you give the money back when they leave, but those people would get some nominal advantage of, like, they get reservations when they want or something. And they would be co-op members, and you would end up with a pile of money that you could use for capital improvements or weather flooding like we have to do in the Intervale.
Friends Frankie's.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I've never thought about it as a co-op before, but I think that that's a really interesting concept. We did a fundraising thing in the beginning when we opened, and we called it Friends of Frankie's, and people were, we asked, because we're, needing, this is an expensive endeavor. So we were raising capital for the restaurant, and people were giving us contributions, and we were giving them 25% back.
Yeah.
So we did that in a way for a little bit. Yeah.
Which was huge too. We raised a substantial amount of money, which also showed how awesome this community is and wanting something new for one, but also just supporting us and the dream. Like, that was amazing. Like seeing that list of people was just like.
It was so encouraging because it was really, there were a lot of times that were very stressful doing the whole build out and everything. You don't know if you're on the right path. And, there's a lot of fear surrounding it, but seeing that support from the community was really encouraging and exciting. So.
Yeah, general contractors are expensive. But, so is it something like that would be the co-op is what you're thinking of? Like if that was like a everyday thing, or like you wanted to buy in at $1,000 and you get 10% or something. The community.
Well, we have a co-op for groceries, right? The Intervale's co-op. There are co-ops all over the place, or employee-owned businesses are also a model that seem to work really well. But, Vermont seems to be really good at this. I can give you the name of the guy that talks people into co-ops. You talked me into it. It's a great concept.
It's an interesting to talk about though. I mean, could be some incentive for the community to come support us. I mean, that could be something that you could talk more about. It's an interesting idea. I like it.
Yeah, I think
Thanks.
Farmhouse did that. I was just gonna say, the original investors have like cards that are 20% off or something. It's pretty substantial.
For life?
I'm not one of them, or I'm not positive, but I worked for Farmhouse Group, and I remember that being a thing where they would just bring their card.
Yeah, we did that too.
Yeah.
Or that we had cards for everybody,
Yeah.
and give them to
And
them.
they're also like almost a co-op for all their restaurants.
Right.
So they
Yeah.
share the accountant, they share the lawyers, they share the purchasing, all of this. So it helps the newer entrants.
Correct.
Great. Wonderful. Building on that, we're talking about relationships here. So, can you talk a little bit about specific relationships to your producers, to your customers, to the city of Burlington, and what they mean to you as a restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, it really takes a village to do this. I'm in the front of the house, so I see mostly. I see the guests every night. I am lucky enough to see people enjoy their time together, interact with staff, employ a staff who truly loves what they do, which is incredible to see. And I think it makes it that much more enriching for everybody. The guests are everything. I mean, having people who you recognize and people who come back, like there's nothing that feels better than that. It's really, I don't know, it's very heartwarming and feels really good because those are the people also who bring the vibes. They bring the good vibes and like they make the room alive and, and that's infectious and it's really cool. You can have like people at the bar, all of a sudden they're all talking to one another and like everything just this natural conversation starts to roll and the bartenders get into it and then, I'm roped into it or whatever. And it just like, then you create that sort of like that space for gathering that we're talking about. That's so important. So in that, for me, like that's it. But, in terms of like, then there's the other side of it with farmers and whatnot that are like also those relationships are the foundation of everything here.
So, and from the ground up, when we started building this, everyone was so helpful. Like other restaurants were helpful to us. The city was very helpful, and we were like really everyone told us to be afraid of that side of it, like with all the pieces. But everyone was like really great. Like even when it came down to the liquor license, we had to call in some favors and people were very helpful. So I'm not even like the very ground up, but it was like this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for like the hundreds of people that helped us in many aspects. Like that's a pretty cool thing and humbling thing. And then then you open the doors and this whole other world. It's wild, And the relationship with all the staff too. Like it's very important. Like Johnny and I had some really in-depth conversations about lots of things, and
Like what?
his grandfather.
Well, I think this is a really interesting point because, and sort of maybe the idea behind this session, I interviewed Jordan many times for my research, my Vermont-based research, particularly during the moment of crisis, during the pandemic here in Vermont, or let's say the main portion of the pandemic when we had all of the crazy shutdowns, and this was prior to Frankie's. And it seemed that, and that research I conducted with my PhD advisor, who is Amy Trubeck, here in the room with us. And we found that relational values really drove the response of all restaurants and chefs to the pandemic. And so it's really sort of this idea of social commitments and relational values is really critical to food system resilience in Vermont. And I think also community resilience. So this idea of relationships, of what we're talking about it quite casually, I think is goes very deep, and it just, I think, speaks to the importance of the social element of the circular economy for food. Without the social sustainability approach, none of this really works. Without the relationships, without the people. So I guess we can talk now about what are some of the biggest challenges in realizing the vision or the mission you have for Frankie's, and in enacting some of the core values that you have discussed with us. Do you want to go? So you can talk at the macro level and also the very sort of acute.
Well, actually, can we talk about that study you did for a second?
Sure.
Because there's actually a point of that, because you had brought up that, and one of those questions was how things changed when we were ordering things or like purchasing during COVID. And I remember
I love that you remember that. It was
well,
2021.
we were having that conversation. I remember me just being like, nothing changed. Like we just ordered less, but nothing changed in how we or how I like ordered produce from people, you know, which was really intriguing. And you kind of fast forward a little bit to now with this tariff situation happening, and there will be effects of that, but like it's really cool that Vermont can be self-sustainable in that sense that like city market's going to be more or less fine, you know, like nothing's really going to change here from a vegetable stance or from a meat stance. Like a lot of that's going to be pretty protected, you know, and there will be issues. I think there's some wine stuff that's happening. But I don't know.
Or plateware, the liquor, like all that stuff.
And that's mainly because it's the localized model, you're saying?
Yeah. It's cool. I remember I was on my way home the other night thinking about it, just that it's like we don't really have a ton to worry about in that aspect. And that's because that system has been built for a long time in Vermont. It's just special in that way. We're all contributing to that, you know, on a daily basis. It's cool.
Labor might be a big problem.
Labor?
Yeah, because the farms are getting raided, and, you know, they don't have enough funds themselves. That's the problem that's happening, that's gonna affect us.
Yeah. I'll ask some people about that. What that's gonna look like. I know some farms should make it. Is it?
Dairy farms.
Sure.
And the apple orchards, and there's a lot of
Thing with picking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anything from you in terms of enacting values and challenges, if you see any?
Yeah, it's hard, but it's also really rewarding. I think, you know, I think like labor is the cost of running a restaurant and delivering the products that we do, and what we want people to be able to earn in a fair way, is challenging. You know, Jordan and I work quite a bit where I'm on the floor as much as I can be, and he's down at the pass. Like we work every night here, but we love it. So we put the energy into it, and you know, it's just that's the balance, I think. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we would do this if we didn't believe in it and we didn't love it and we didn't put those values back into the place that we love. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, in previous discussions, we've talked about maybe a call to other local businesses to sort of be in this together. What would you say to your local downtown community in terms of businesses, in terms of, you know, banding together to address your role as this regenerating community and social fabric? Sort of a big question.
We all support each other. Like it's at this point of the game in Burlington, it's people that all over the place. You know, like John and I have worked together for a long time. Cindy and I have worked together for a long time. And we all support the other restaurants in town too. It's like every weekend my wife and I go somewhere. You know, so it's like we're in that aspect. I think if we're all really good, and you know, some other cook wants to go somewhere else, like that's okay too. You know, like we support that if it needs growth. So.
Yeah, I think it's so much more fun to support each other too and what everybody's doing in town, you know, and the more that we can do that, the more encouraging it is for other people to open cool spots. And the more spots that open downtown, the more people come downtown. And then you start to create a vibrant city center. And I think that is got kind of lost the past few years with people, and like either they're afraid to come downtown or there's nothing here, this doom and gloom of like downtown Burlington, when it's just not. I don't see that. I live downtown. I've lived downtown for 20 years. Like, I've seen this city go up and down. It's a small city. You see a lot. So when something's going on, like, everybody sees it. And I don't think that necessarily means that it is an unhealthy place to live or it's dangerous by any means. There's a lot of people like moving in from smaller stores to bigger stores, and there's people moving in all the time. So I don't know. I think just keep coming downtown. Just keep dining. Keep coming and hanging out together. Keep talking, and buying local food and supporting the local economy. And that's how you create, I think, again, like vibrant city centers and civics.
And as a business, we are succeeding. Since the last couple of months, we realized that we are succeeding, which is huge, and especially under a year. And that just goes to show
succeeding, like people are coming here to eat.
Yeah, it just shows that people want to come for an experience. People want more of an experience in a space, and Sydney's been able to provide that in the front. And we put as much as we can cooking tasty food. That people wanted that. People are excited about that, and it really shows because people keep coming to these stores, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, love it. I just have a final question, and then opening it up. This question is also for everyone in the room. This concept of circularity, we've talked about this a little bit before, but what does that really mean to you as individuals, as the restaurant, to you all? I would love to hear it based on what we've discussed so far in terms of moving from this like linear model to a more circular model where we're considering eliminating waste and circulating things at their highest value, and then this concept of regenerating nature and then community in this case. I know Jordan's got thoughts about this.
Yeah. I mean, we do well with waste. We're not perfect. I mean, Vermont has a lot to offer, but sometimes in the middle of January and February it gets hard. But those some Four Seasons farms that are doing a great job. I don't know quite the answer to that. I don't know. Let me think about it for a minute.
Sure. Yeah.
How's the composting of food waste going at a restaurant level? I mean, we adapt it in our home, we figure it out, and we keep our waste separate, and we make sure it gets into a bin that goes to the compost.
We compost, we have a 64-gallon bin. Well, that's enough, 32-gallon bins. A lot of it's shells, to be honest with you.
Every plate we scrape into there, like if there's
and so then
left.
Pickup is how often, and is it
once a week?
Once a week.
So we're composting everything that we can. That definitely happens.
Because that transformation for restaurants has been recent, right? It's not for you, but I mean
from a legal
from a requirement standpoint. I don't know how it's monitored, but
I feel like when I was a younger cook, no one really composted.
Right.
I can't remember the last time I did work some of that in compost. So it's been a while. And I worked at restaurants that gave I scrap for people's pigs too. We don't do that, but I'm certain we end up doing that.
To me, that's the most circular.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's the hierarchy of waste, and really the compost is at the bottom because landfill is considered illegal in this context. We're considering it not an option for food. So we should not send any food to landfill. Compost is the absolute last when the food is no longer edible and there's no other better use for it. So this idea of keeping food in the system at its highest value, it's when it feeds humans. So if there's any surplus food, extending the life of ingredients, all of these things are first. Obviously managing the waste at the beginning of it, so reducing what you serve so that there's less plate waste, so many ways to reduce it. And then the next step would be, what is the next best use for that waste? Absolutely, feed it to animals. And then you go down the list of energy, conversion to energy or other materials. And then compost would be, sort of the last step really. And I think that in, what I know from Frankie's, what you do in terms of your sourcing and the menu. I don't know who's dined here. Okay, I think for those of you who haven't, I highly recommend. It's a wonderful, wonderful restaurant. But you can see by their menu, which is on the door right now, it's a really limited menu. And so they know what they're going to buy every day, and they know what's going to be served. They're not going to have a lot of excess to begin with. And those are part of the sort of circular practices behind, a menu design and just being better about eliminating waste at the beginning. And then, the management of waste when it comes to the food part is the compost, right? When the food is no longer edible or transformable, in your capacity in the restaurant. So I think that that's something that you do here in the restaurant, maybe just by the nature of the model you have here.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's something that we talked about before too, or and this goes to the farmers who are growing such incredible crops and beautiful food. And so we're able to use what do you use, 98% of a vegetable probably. I'm thinking of kale stems that are cut up into a little salsa verde, or things that are made into a pesto, or radish tops, for example, or using the cheese rind for a sauce base, or I don't know, there's so many creative ways to use food that would sometimes be considered waste for a lot of people, but I think Jordan and Johnny and the cooks are just so incredible at using what we have, that there's very little waste. We get whole bass in, and instead of, it's not trim, it's this beautiful part of the belly that we can use to fry and put another dish on, and it's delicious and sustainable in that way. Yeah, and again, that just goes to the products that we're getting from people too, and how well they're taken care of and managed and delivered, and how each person in that sort of sequence of delivery from the door to the table is so well taken care of.
I have just a follow-up question about that for all of you two who are working here. Is this something that you knew, or is it something that you've learned because of the approach that you take here, right? It's so thinking about all parts of the kale or all parts of the fish, which is that, in the sense, it's you can't design waste out of the system if you don't know how to take something and not perceive of it as waste in the first place. So I was just wondering, do you have conversations about that? Do you order and then figure out how you're going to make sure to use all of the product? Or, does it emerge? You're oh, we have all these kale stems. What are we going to do with the kale stems? Is it sort of a dialogue in the kitchen?
Yeah, we always learn. There's always different
It's looking
things.
at both too,
Yeah,
right?
both.
Look at the farm lists, and then the menu be read accordingly, or it's on Sunday, Monday, it's all right, what do we have left over from the weekend? Boom, we come up with a dish.
I ordered too much arugula.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Staff meal.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's an exciting day.
We have a dehydrator, and if we have an excess amount of ramps, we can turn that into a ramp powder that we can sprinkle on top of something. Or, we can always
Preserving.
it's a great and I feel like I brought this up yesterday to Ben, which you probably get sick of my stories. But there's turnip greens that Trillium Hill grows. They grow like turnip, these beautiful hot-fried turnips every spring. These big green tops on them. Like no one even else sells them with good tops on them like that. I don't know how they're doing this because usually they get bugs and stuff. But these tops, I remember I read a recipe that said like marinated turnip tops. And then now these turnip tops are more exciting than the actual turnip. And then yesterday we've been running this stuff where we like take baby Swiss chard and cook it down and then marinate it with shallots and garlic and vinegar and oil. So it's like this marinated kind of wilted baby chard thing over top of it. And that's done from a Google recipe from these turnip greens we didn't know how to use. That became more exciting than the actual turnip. So yeah, it's a learned thing as you go. And I don't know, like I'm sure one of these guys will teach us something down the road about how to use something.
Internet's a marvelous thing. You know?
Or you see something on Instagram or someone else's menu or something. Yeah, you're like, oh, that's a cool idea.
It's such an exciting world in that way, I think, to see what other people are doing. Like there's truly like restaurants right now and food culture and the way people are dining around the world it's awesome. And yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from each other and there's a lot to be inspired by in that way.
Cookbooks are dead. No cookbooks. Just
No, cookbooks are not
checking.
bad.
Just checking.
No, cookbooks are awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys they're using them all the time. Max and I are always looking at a cocktail recipe book or, you know, like I'm reading wine books or whatever it is. We're definitely, we like books.
We have to, I teach at UVM, a group of us here, and
Yeah.
we now have to have explicit cookbook reading sessions because the intergenerational transfer of knowledge is not only less from like the parent to the child, but it's also less from a cookbook to the person. It's now through the internet and Instagram and TikTok, and so we're just finding it, we're sort of interested, like what's going to happen to the cookbook going forward. But it's also interesting, right? Like you can get an immediate inspiration from something on the internet.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely look at cookbooks less than I did probably 5 or 10 years
Yeah.
ago, for sure.
Even though the last text message you sent it was the recipe from a cookbook last night.
Less sense.
Which cookbook?
This place in London, I think it's closed now, Chiltern Firehouse.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really cool spot.
Really cool.
Very fitting.
Did you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Like, you know, you talked about there's a community of restaurateurs in the area, and through that community, there's got to be other potential business opportunities that would benefit all the restaurants together. Things that you do that are time consuming, like, you know, Vermont produces vast quantities of apples, and Champlain Orchard stores them in a nitrogen room to keep them from oxidizing and stay fresh longer. You can't do that, right? You're not going to be able to do something like that, but maybe is there a business that could make apple pies or apple tarts that you could all share together? Is there other opportunities out there that to fill in and make your menu more varied without more work?
I'm not sure. Pittsburgh Pickle's doing a great job with that.
Yeah, they do.
I know a lot of restaurants around town use their pickles, which is probably a help in saving labor, and they make a great product. The apple pie, there used to be an apple pie baking company. You guys, anyone remember that?
Red House doing something like that.
No, I think Ben and Jerry's started it. They make it like in the early 2000s. Do you remember that? They make a bunch of apples. Apple pie.
Laminated pie dough. That seems like something you get pain in the butt to do.
Yeah.
Mirabelle's does that.
Yeah, Mirabelle's actually started doing puff pastry too, I think. Yeah.
That's good.
How about that for dessert thing? Which is, yeah, we I don't know how to make doughs like that.
then on the other end, we went to a talk yesterday where they talked about 1/3 of the of our climate issue with food is related to pets. So is there opportunities to siphon off some of your food scraps to a new business that would be pet food?
Yeah, you can grind up the bones and shells or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after hearing you talking about the thing with the pigs and the compost, like,
Yeah.
maybe you want to reach out to a farmer, anyone around that might reach out. Or maybe there could be a business created that, like, picks up compost for farms.
Yeah.
I don't know how sustainable that is, or maybe there's some college kids that want to start up something like that. That could be good. I bet you most restaurants would be into something like that. Like Black Bear Biodiesel picks up our fry oil free, and they're making money out of that. That's like really, really great. The guys are super nice. I love dealing with them. And then there's other companies from out of state that you have to pay to have people take your oil. So I mean, it seems like that model's working very well for them. There's probably more stuff out there.
I think you're touching on a great point there, that there's like an economy behind all of this. This is not just a sort of better way to do things. There's an economic benefit and job creation behind doing these things better, these better, more circular practices. And I would love to see personally a packaging, like a bottle deposit style system for all of the bottles and all of the packaging that we're taking home, for example. That could be something that local restaurants could get together and sort of coordinate. And, that would be, take a little bit of work, but have like a central repository where things are being cleaned, disinfected, and then sent back out into the system. And consumers have the incentive to keep their deposits and maybe get some sort of, incentive on a little bit of a discount or something like that to just keep materials that are not that are single use or not necessarily compostable. As we know, we have some issues with compostable packaging being able to actually compost here in Vermont. I love that idea though of buying, coming together as restaurants and figuring out what you can do to work together to achieve some of these goals together.
There's an idea brought up a while back that incentivizing people to bring their own to-go containers if they're taking food home, but nothing was ever landed on what that incentive is. Like you
Free
can't
ice
give
cream.
away.
You told my students that once.
Did I?
Nice.
Maybe that's
Very creamy.
Give them a scoop of ice cream or a cookie or something if you bring your own. And I guarantee you people will do it. Or at least try to remember. Because that's
Sure.
huge.
Do something for sure.
Or it's like reusable bags at the grocery store, you charge people
Yeah.
for the container.
Mm-hmm.
You take
Oh,
it
yeah.
home, so then they'll remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But hopefully then they will do it and not just leave it, and then it becomes plate waste.
So that can become pig food.
Yeah.
Okay.
What does that look like? What does that look like here currently? Are you able to give scraps to any farmers for livestock?
I haven't reached out to anyone, but this makes me want to, for sure. Yeah, well,
To understand if any the framework like in terms of what is regulated to be able to do that, I think is an interesting conversation. But
Yeah, Jasper Hill does it with the leftover whey they feed the pigs. That's a very specific one
byproduct.
one byproduct. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. It might just involve more separation or something between.
I like to make stocks, and so when the food waste collection first started, I called somebody and asked, like sometimes I'll use a very large ham bone or something, and I said, can I put that in the other food scraps? And they said, yeah, because the first thing they do is they have this huge grinder, and we can handle handbook.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, we don't, our compost people never say anything about the shells, and sometimes it's, we're going through probably 600 little necks a week, sometimes same amount of oysters. So.
Yeah. Maybe it's a good soil amendment.
Yeah.
And chicken.
Technically, all organic matter should be
Mm-hmm.
chicken.
Chickens like to eat non-shells.
Oh,
The
yeah.
mineral content is good for them. Yeah.
There was a bar manager at Waterworks named Chris, and I'm like blanking on his last name right now, but he was really into the like more of a closed loop system for restaurants and recycling. So he was going around when we were working at Hen, I was saving all of the corks from the wine bottles and whatnot, and he would pick them up, and also the bottle caps and the twist tops. Because those aren't recyclable, but they also often end up in that. And he was also picking up something else though too, but he had an idea to start a whole recycling.
4-pack containers.
But yeah, the Tetra Pak, those beer top containers too. He was picking up and taking.
Because those can just be reused
Totally.
again and again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which ended up, I was surprised by how much stuff that actually created.
Yeah.
It was like a bin
It was a lot.
every week or two, and I was just like, it's actually a lot of stuff.
Yeah. But there is, I think, to your point, there is an opportunity for someone to start a business like that.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Any thoughts about circularity and what that might look like here in Burlington? What about you, Tyler? That's the organizer of Public Philosophy Week, Tyler Doggett. I'm going to call him out. I think that there's just so much opportunity, and I think that some of these things, another reason why I think restaurants and chefs are super important to this conversation is that you're doing a lot of these things anyway. This is part of your skill set and some of your practices that are just happening anyway. And so I think becoming more aware of where we can make small changes and try to scale up these circular practices from sourcing through to thinking about waste management, I think is just there's so much influence you have here. And also we talked about a lot about the which I hadn't mentioned before, how you're training each other. You're training sort of the future generation of chefs, or maybe even the future generation of chefs are training you, and they go on to other restaurants, and those practices are then disseminated. And so that's a huge amount of influence in promoting these types of circular practices. So it's not just the influence you have on the producers or on us, the people who are coming in and eating your delicious food, but also, the continuing of these
100%.
practices and them evolving, I think is huge.
Cody moved to Vermont to cook here in Vermont from Pennsylvania.
Awesome. Do you have any comments on how chefs are doing it
How's
better
it
here?
going?
I was just very drawn to the small farm scene here. And I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and it was similar there, so that just kind of drew me to Vermont.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
Do you see a big difference between Lancaster and here?
The seasons are different, but the farming is very similar. It's people support their local food system in my hometown. That seems very similar here as well.
The tomatoes are better here though, right?
The restaurants buy
Golds for sure.
a lot of products from farmers, and I'd be interested to see that, talking to even on a small level, the difference of Palmacal's wholesale accounts versus retail accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I know City Market, that's Palmacal's biggest account. I mean, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about all the jobs that creates and different opportunities for people to leave that farm and open their own farm because they've actually been able to secure a solid job that can sustain them on a day-to-day basis, and then provide the next opportunity for them, which I've seen happen. People opening their own farms.
Well, there's the June farm, they were farmers at Pitchfork for years. And when we were closed for the fire break, I was working at Pitchfork and I met them there. And then, like, 2 years later, they opened up June Farm,
Yeah.
And that's just like what you just talking about. It's like a perfect example. Like, it's the same thing with like cooks working in restaurants and then getting a chef job and then eventually opening up a restaurant,
Yeah, there's definitely a younger generation farming right now and making cheese. And who does Swallowtail again? They were in here recently. Stony Pond. Yeah, they're so lovely and nice. Thanks. Good call out. But they're just starting, and that's not an easy farming in Vermont and cheese making, and the dairy culture here is difficult to get into. But there are people who want that and are going back to that. So it's pretty cool to see. Yeah. Just allows us to do what we do too and support them.
Yeah, all of us as restaurants buying, the community supporting the restaurants, everyone buying all those vegetables at the city market, that's providing opportunity for all of us. And more vegetables, it's cool.
Yeah, it's like you dine here, you're like, oh man, I had like amazing asparagus from Palmacala and Frankie's. So I'm gonna go to the co-op and get some now. I want to eat it with some egg yolk sauce or whatever, It's hopefully that's the goal,
Yeah.
That sounds great.
I do have a question about that.
Please.
Or an observation. So when I travel, it's hard because in Vermont, you know where your food comes from.
Yeah.
Right? We all have an awareness of what you guys are putting on the plate. Do you have that in Pennsylvania? Do you have that same sort of connection to where the food is actually coming from?
I think it's just a little harder for people to find it because we don't have places like City Market. We gotta go directly to the farmer and get them.
Do the restaurants
Oh,
offer up that awareness though?
there is a select few of restaurants that do. A lot of them are just like Cisco or US Food, or their competitor. Just 'cause it's cheaper to do it that way.
Yeah, we're spoiled.
Yeah, we really are. It's true.
I feel like because of the food awareness we have here, I don't know, social media, you see people who travel to Europe and like, oh my God, my body felt so much better than when I'm, back home in the States eating. And I'm like, well, but we eat that way in Vermont.
Yeah.
Right? Our food isn't bastardized.
Yeah.
I think even sometimes you get too far out of Chittenden County, that changes. When I go visit my mom in southern Vermont, she eats well, and it's not the same as up here. We have Burlington's a special place in that aspect. Chittenden County is special.
Do you mean in terms of the access to food, or just the general awareness of where things are grown and how things are
I
produced?
think all of it, yeah, and the quality. It's like we have a garden in our backyard, but also know that we can also go to the grocery store and get whatever the vegetables we want. Even this time of year with greens, like baby spinach and stuff.
Oh yeah, Trillium's doing some really good.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. Okay. Any other last thoughts on circularity, or your personal 2 cents about how that framework might affect your life, how you want to get involved? Cynthia is but the Climate Kitchen team is in the house. We've got Emily Barber, Amy Trubeck, and Cynthia Bellevue, yeah, and they're all thinking about these things, I think, on a daily basis, more or less. And if they're not, I tell them to. So.
Well, I just got back from 6 weeks traveling through the Southwest, but then I came back through Louisiana and I'm okay. Alabama, Mississippi,
places that I wasn't familiar with. And I was really impressed by the local food. They talked about where it was from, especially Louisiana. It was really remarkable, even in the poorest communities.